looking at the 1754 town plan of Bethabara. It shows the buildings that were in the village a year after the Moravians arrived in Wachovia. Using this historical map, the 1754 village was rebuilt in the 1990s. The reconstructed buildings in this video match as closely as possible to the original ones found in this drawing.
When the Moravians first came here in November of 1753, this was the only building here on site. It was a cabin built by Hans Wagner, who had built it in 1752 and then moved farther west to the Yadkin River. And those first 15 Moravian men all stayed and slept on the floor in here, with the exception of one who remembered to bring a hammock. And eventually they found that there were many travelers from along the Great Wagon Road that would come here looking for a break and also looking for medical treatment from Dr. Calderline. And eventually the Moravians realized they would need some additional buildings to accommodate those travelers. In February of 1754, the Moravians built this cabin here to accommodate some of the strangers. And this is also what Dr. Calderline used to treat some of those patients that came to him. They stayed in here where he could check on them. He treated everything from broken bones to fever. And he also treated other Moravians, such as Brother Peterson, who had a tree fall on him while he was cutting it down. So the doctor bled him and he eventually recovered. The structure that they built here is called a dog trot, with two halves to it and an open passageway in the middle. So they would have had people staying in here and then use this half for storage. Some of the tools they would have used to make this log cabin style include this adze, which was used for creating the flat sides of logs here, as well as the notches. They also would have used what's called a froe with a mallet that was used for cutting pieces of wood for pieces such as the shingles that you see on the ceiling. The first thing the Moravians built in November of 1753 was this bake oven, and they were getting tired of cooking bread over the open campfire when it rise, and so they built this bake oven where the bread would rise. Now, wheat was scarce at the time. They had plenty of cornmeal, so cornbread was really the bread of choice for those first few years. The Moravians then built this cabin, which was used as additional sleeping quarters for strangers. Eventually it became the cow house where they kept their cows. You notice this trough here, which was dug out of a felled tree. The Moravians allowed their cattle to roam free in the woods. They didn't keep them penned up, but they did eventually learn to tie them to the trough at nighttime so they would learn to come back here for feeding and not get preyed on by bears and wolves. In 1754, the Moravians realized they needed some larger sleeping quarters for themselves. They'd been out cutting some fence rails and had some extra left over, so they used them as horizontal slats that you see here. And in contrast to some of the other cabins they had, there was no chinking here originally, and it allowed for that airflow in the summer months. But eventually they realized that it made it almost unbearable in the winter months. So by 1755 they began construction of a larger timbered sleeping quarters for themselves. Eventually the Moravians built this medicinal garden for Dr. Calderline. They grew a variety of herbs here that were used to treat all sorts of ailments.
From just a few buildings, Bethabara grew into a thriving center of commerce and would remain Wachovia's main town until the construction of Salem in 1766.